Ogden Avenue, it's the idea of the public way, the idea of pedestrian safety. We know it's an important part of the discussion for the community, right? And so what we're showing today is, potential scenarios that would take place over time that would hopefully inform how future development occurs. So all of these things to keep in mind, keep in mind as we walk through these massings, and keep an open mind, and really, hopefully this will trigger some thoughts and we can have some really good discussion in our breakout rooms in a little bit.
And Gerard, I just want to mention that one more thing that we wanted to kind of offer up as background on this is that a couple of these, so these concepts are structured kind of from, highest density and intensity down to lowest. And a couple of them show a hotel included in the programming. And, we hadn't really touched on it in the market analysis. We didn't really quite get that far down in the weeds in the work that we did. But the reason why those are included in there is because there has been some developer interest in a hotel on the corridor. So we want to make sure that in addition to the research that we're doing and our analysis, that we're also, keeping in mind what is the market, the current real estate market bringing, to this area. And then, yeah, Mark, I'll hand it back off to you.
Okay, Brian, thank you. Next slide then. As we start this, I just wanted to say, what we were trying to do, everybody, is with this meeting, we're going to get to know you a little bit better. And of course, we're revisiting the Ogden corridor after our Paulus station work of 5 years ago. But we haven't really had a conversation with you yet. So the principles that Gerardo and Brian spoke about that we're trying to hit here, if you recall from the earlier part of the presentation, it's where is the wind coming from? Where is the sun? What is the street like? These are different principles that we all share. They're irrefutable. In other words, they're almost physical facts of this particular place in Chicago, which makes it both common to Chicago, but also unique as well. So I just wanted to set that up, that we're not looking for esoteric design underpinnings to provide something to the developers and architects for the RFPs. We're looking for things that they will end up being able to understand and also use, and hopefully things that you will appreciate. This first diagram just shows that the buildings that are on the north and south sides of Ogden will have both sharp corners and blunt corners, acute and obtuse angled corners because of the tilt of the street. We think that the blunt corners could be used to make a little space on both on two opposite ends of these two blocks that are part of what might become a social public domain, perhaps for the businesses and people that are living there. That's one thing. And then the blue indicates the narrowed Ogden Avenue corridor to make a public place or space or square. We've been calling it ourselves internally Ogden Square, a place that is shaded, more like that photograph from the 1930s, let's say. A place that's shaded, that has traffic coming through it, yes, but also places to sit down and enjoy life as the day goes by. And the final thing of this slide is to illustrate that we're suggesting how the alley network that comes in from the north and south might pass through the blocks. It's another fact. Alleys are a fact, and a joyous one in Chicago. We're really happy we have them. We think that these alleys could become pass through arcades or even shopping corridors that come from the alleys that approach Ogden, magnifying the potential of the two blocks. Next slide, please. Massing number one, we call the quad because it looks a little bit like that last diagram. Go to the next slide, Brian. It is, we've divided, because the alleys come in from the north and south, we divided the two blocks, the two parcels into 4 pieces. The alleys and Ogden both providing a kind of X, let's say, to divide the two blocks. We've also set back the two facades a little bit from the north and south sides of Ogden, though leaving a little blunt end at the food and beverage at the northeast end of that southern block. and at the southwest end of the northern block, a little grocery nubbin, I don't know what quite to call it, that comes out and approaches the street. These we think are really great places for cafe and restaurant and other people serving retail that could spill out onto the larger right of way that we've created because of the Ogden change. And of course, you see the arcades coming through from the alleys from the north and south. Next slide, please. This is how the massing might turn out. It is not an architectural, let's say, given, but is an interpretation of how the massing would develop on the previous plan that you just saw, with a hotel at the northeast corner of the northern site, office buildings above retail on the northwest corner, affordable housing on both sides of the southern block, all of it atop a retail or a commercial base that is fronting Ogden, but also we believe could be interesting to front the two arcades coming from the alleys from the north and the south. In other words, making it kind of a deeper, more frontaged commercial and retail life that could exist on these two blocks at what is, if we could narrow the Ogden and slow it down a little bit, become, you could say, Ogden Square, or a heart. You might say, could suggest it might be a heart of the Ogden corridor. Next slide, please. Massing number 2 is Echo, we called it. Next slide, Brian. Echo because it's going to look, both sides are a bit more reflective of each other. Here, the street is still, we're suggesting narrowing it, but the north block is not pulled back from its property line. It's full. The full footprint is there, though, with the alley arcade coming through potentially. The south one has been pulled back a little bit from its street frontage to allow for kiosks and more small scale retail pop-ups, you could say, on the right of way that exists on the edge of Ogden there at the north edge of the south block. In the next slide, we'll show you how that massing might appear. It's echoing because we suggested that the massing of these both sides of the street steps back. You get a low high bay first level for retail, and then a few floors of the first step behind that, and a few more floors of a second step behind all that on both sides. Again, here though, we think the affordable housing could exist on either side of Ogden. But with a hotel and the thinnest bar at the very top of the north block. The width of a hotel footprint is narrower than other footprints. And so we think that's where that could live. But again, you can see here the interesting additional public right-of-way space made at the north side of the south block there. You can see the kiosks, notional shapes of different vendors that might pop up there, whether it's a coffee shop or flowers or whatever, light grocery, anything that would find it to be enjoyed in a sidewalk environment or a plaza environment on the north side of that south block. Finally, the third scheme we call Terrace. Here we've begun to really more to a courtyard format that Chris spoke about from the precedents, begin to think about how we might form a space that speak to each other within both building massings on opposite sides of the street. Some moving toward trying to make a more intimate space offset the public right of way on Ogden, but still connected to it. Next slide. And this is how this might appear. You can see that there are two courtyards carved into a much lower massing with mixed use and affordable housing on the north side and affordable housing on the south. We think these massings of course, all of these massings are not absolute. We're not in love with any of them. We're just, we're trying to take what might be a reasonable area and deploy them, a reasonable amount of square footage and deploy them in these three particular schemes, but we're also doing them vis-a-vis the sun and the wind and the Ogden corridor. We're being smart about the physics and the weather, let's say, when we're doing these schemes, so that our hope that is the developers and architects that follow us will find these principles to be worthwhile and make good use of them. But you can see in this one, the courtyards, it might be covered, they might not be. There can be the same kiosks along Ogden if we're able to narrow it. And this is the lowest density scheme. I think it's a maximum 4 floors in any one spot there. And yet again, with the same retail along on the ground plane, predominantly along Ogden, but also ringing the 2 courtyards that face each other. Those are our schemes. Thank you, Brian and Gerardo.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you everybody. And then yeah, we want to make sure that we're getting to the collaborative part of the meeting here. So thanks for bearing with us on that. And so what we're going to do next is go into these breakout groups, and we're just going to review the development concepts, and we have a few questions set up for you. So we're going to get to that now. We've got about 15 minutes for that, and we'll come back, discuss more. We've still got the polling aspect of it. Yeah, Ethan is helping out with this. So for the breakout rooms, you should get a prompt to join a room. If you Okay, yeah, thanks everybody for taking part in the breakout rooms. I want to come back to the large group here and just take like a few minutes to talk about uh, what was said and what some of the thoughts were from the breakout groups. Why don't we start with the other one? Gerardo and Mark, feedback from yours, just a quick summary.
Yeah, Mark, anything that stood out from our discussion?
Well, I mean, there were interesting questions, really serious questions about program. It was asked what sort of retail would be on the ground floor, how big box versus small, locally owned, perhaps. Why a hotel? Let's make sure that we have enough public housing. The response there, or some of the conversation was about we need to absolutely, these are important concerns, but we need to also think about the let's say the needs that might be from the larger area around the Ogden Avenue corridor, and a real legitimate concern about who's going to be responding to the RFPs, and will it be local businesses and developers and others, and local people building it, and local people finding jobs in it once it's done. Those were some of the primary concerns. I don't know, Gerardo, if I've missed anything.
The only other concern that I'm hearing in the chat and hearing, the breakout rooms, and we got cut off essentially, but we just didn't have enough time to cover a lot of ground, or as much ground as folks would have liked. So moving forward, we'll make sure to kind of allow a little bit more time for that discussion as well.
Okay, yeah, apologies for that. But if anybody else wants to add into the conversation here, please feel free. April, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
So the question that I put into the chat, thanks, Brian, is has there been any analysis of the surrounding properties? Are they owner occupied or renter occupied? Will this amendment increase property taxes for those who are owner occupied? And or are you anticipating or assuming that this might be a condition of pushing out the owners or current renters if the property taxes are to increase, or were to increase due to this amenity?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely, we've heard in our roundtables concerns over gentrification and the impact that new development could have. So that's a great point. We haven't done an in-depth analysis of, the surrounding properties. There is a lot of vacant land that is nearby, but it is quite possible too that this could have some impacts on the corridor. I think to kind of tie this into what Mark was just saying about concerns over who's going to be benefiting from this. We do want this to be a community-led process in terms of the evaluation, and we do want to prioritize development applications that are coming either from folks who have a stake in the community, or applications that are showing a certain sensitivity to that and plan to not just have this be a benefit to the developer, but to contractors, local businesses that may want to locate in those tenant spaces, residents in the community that are looking for affordable housing units. So those are priorities to us for sure.
If I could just add, Brian, really quick, we're working at multiple scales in North Lawndale, not just on the corridor. So, one of the initiatives that I think was announced not too long ago was a 1,000 Homes initiative, where we're collaborating with our Department of Housing, in their effort to create, affordable home ownership in the area. So, the idea of a vibrant corridor with strong local home ownership, and job creation, all kind of bundled together. That's what Invest Southwest is really trying to do, is leveraging all of the different programs and resources that the city brings to the table to be able to have, maximum impact.
I hear that, but based on the statistics, the stats that you all provided, seeing as that the community has a median income of about what 30 something thousand dollars. Again, I feel like you've added some essence to my question, but it has not been necessarily like answered per se. I just kind of encourage you to kind of think about that critical, kind of deepen the analysis of the current properties. I do understand that there are vacant properties, but per the rendering, I see actual structures so standing. So again, I just encourage you to deepen that analysis around the current owners that are there.
And let me say this really quickly as well. The city owns a lot of this land, right? So we will help control how that market is kind of brought to bear. The 1,000 homes, for instance, those are not going to be homes that are really high in terms of that. Not they'll be high in terms of value, but price to sell to the community will not be as that threshold will not be that high, which kind of keeps the ability for us to keep things in the area affordable and to not let it get out of hand. You know, one thing that happened when they did the 606 trail is they didn't have a housing plan in place, and a lot of things were sold by. Can't stop folks from selling, but what we can do with the 3,000 lots that are available, city-owned vacant lots that are available in North Lawndale, make sure we keep that price down low. The other thing that I want to remind you of is when you look at our community as a whole, let's say an average ward should be about 42,000 residents. In earnest, we're about 31 to 30,000 people in our ward. When we did the last census, we had to draw in the Cook County Jail to make the residents of the Cook County Jail in the 24th ward, because they are residents when they're housed in that detention facility. The point that I'm bringing is we got a lot of land that in order for us to, we want to continue to keep the conversation around gentrification at the forefront of everybody who's developing is mind. But we got to bring rooftops to our community when we talk about medium boxes, big boxes, or even our businesses within our community who want to survive, that are mom and pops that we want to create. They won't be able to survive with the amount of folks that we have in this community. So we got to talk about how we build affordable quality housing for people who are here and folks that want to come into this community. But we got to do both. We got to make sure that we're doing both.
Thank you, Alderman Scott. I feel very delighted to hear that property taxes are something that is a priority to you and retaining owners and renters who like to still continue to rent here in Lawndale. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
I live here. I don't want my taxes to be any higher than they currently are. So if we can make quality housing that is affordable, because it has to be quality. Nobody wants to live in something that they wouldn't live in any other part of the city, but making sure that we do retain the affordability part of it, I think is something that is on the forefront of everybody's mind, as well as the Department of Housing.
Thanks a lot, Alderman. You know, we're running up on our stop time here, so I want to jump out of the presentation here for a moment and go to our online poll here. So this, all you have to do on your phone is go to this address, menti.com, menti.com. And if you enter this code in, you'll see this slide come up here. And I apologize for not giving a little bit more time to this, but if you want to go on there now, you'll be able to see the results in real time. We've got a few questions here.
Brian, is this something that folks can do on their own time after we wrap up?
I think it's got to be open now. I don't know. I haven't looked into it enough to know if that's an option.
Well, we can certainly take any other questions or comments while folks are, oh, there we go. While folks are filling out their surveys.
Yeah, definitely. So I can also just cover a few things about, our dates and, what is upcoming in this process. So we have the release date of November 30th planned. And, we haven't settled on the deadline yet for when we expect, the RFP applications to be due. But, we expect in the spring, and then we'll begin our evaluation process, and that'll be community oriented. The city is going to do a screening for financial feasibility, to make sure that we're, moving on to discussing projects that are actually, can happen. But then we will be involving, members of our community roundtable, and we'll also be having some, greater community meetings too, like, a group like today where we're expanding out more from the, maybe dozen or so members of that roundtable. Cool. It looks like restaurant is definitely a clear leader here, followed by grocery store.
And that surprises me.
Great.
It's a pleasant surprise.
If y'all don't mind, I'm going to move on to the next one here because we got a few other questions. So this next one is, what type of housing would you like to see on the RFP site? And this is something that we covered in our breakout session in terms of, how are we determining this? And clearly the city has the means to subsidize affordable housing, but, that's not to say that 100% affordable housing is what's needed here. So, and I'm very glad I asked this question because it seems like there's some consensus around the mix.
The interesting, Brian, a follow-up question on that would be, what would the ratio be? What would be a good ratio be between the two?
Yeah.
Is an interesting thought too. Yeah.
I thought about asking something that was a little bit more, but I just wanted to try to keep it simple.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm going to move on to the next question here. And for here, this is just presenting the three options, the three development concepts, kind of going from like highest density down to lowest on the right. And just let us know, like, which one of these, do you have a preference for? This will help us for when we are moving into the, drafting the RFP and working with Studio Gang on, some visuals to put in there to help communicate that, community vision.
Guys, I'm driving, and that's why I'm not participating in the survey, so I can't even see where I'm supposed to push stuff. So I need to keep my eyes on the road.
Definitely prioritize safety, but it's good to see a few votes here, and it seems like the quad concept is definitely the most popular here, which is cool to see. We're hitting on 1 o'clock here. I had a couple more questions. I'm going to shelve those to just wrap it up here and our.
I guess could we do like a survey? Do folks have a couple more minutes to answer a couple more questions? It'd be nice to kind of finish the exercise if that's okay.
Yeah, I can do it.
Okay, let's try. If folks have to leave, we totally understand, but I think this is really helpful for us.
Yeah, no, and it's cool too. It's cool to see what people think. Yeah, I agree. No, that's a good point. All right, well, I'm going to move on to the next one. So this is more focused on improving the pedestrian experience on Ogden and what kind of strategies or you'd like to see implemented. And this is another one where you rank too. So we give you several options of like, what you'd like to see to improve that pedestrian environment. And, you can rank all 5 of those, or, you don't have to do all of them too. You can just pick your top 3 and prioritize them as well.
Interesting to see pedestrian safety rise to the top here, which is something it's consistent with what we've heard and what's in all of the different plans that we reviewed as well.
And this is a case too where, we can look at multiple options. So it's important to, of the menu of things that could potentially be implemented on Ogden, what should rise to the top there. Cool. Got a few responses here. If anybody else is still working on it, if you could submit your response here, but pretty consistent with the number of responses we had for the others. So, the last one here, we're going to it's a like a word cloud, and you can pick up to 3 words that you think best describe your vision for the corridor here, and its characteristics right now, and also what it could be in the future. Cool. Those are good ones to start with. So, vibrant community, alive, developed by us. It's a good one. Destination, community-led, authentic, beautiful, equitable, welcoming, active, Afro-urbanism, industrious, green. Wrap this up in a few here. So if you're still entering in, if you can get those in soon. So, actually, I think I'll leave that open and still go back to this slide, our kind of wrap up slide here. I just wanted to show this timeline here in terms of where this is headed to. So it's DPD's goal to have projects under construction or beginning construction on all the corridors by 2022. And so we're in this green bar here of releasing, like I said, releasing the RFP on November 30th, and kind of around that border between first and second quarters in 2020, we'll begin the evaluation process. And I just do want to stress again that we're building in that equity lens and that community element by involving folks like you all who are here today, the stakeholders in that evaluation process, to make sure that the sort of the short list of projects that we're considering are going to have the community in mind. They're going to have clear community benefits, and involving the who's building it, who the developer is, who are the contractors that are going to be involved in that, who's going to populate those storefronts there, who's going to be living in affordable housing. And that's why we want to make sure that the community is closely involved, and that we're hearing from you when we get those development proposals, and we will be sharing those with you and looking at that evaluation as a partnership. That's very important to us. And then, the following steps will be to, we'll need to negotiate redevelopment agreements and look at, how we're applying the financial incentives, and, looking for early 2022 for a project to be underway, under construction here. So I really appreciate everybody's time. I apologize that maybe they got, cut off a little bit early. This is my contact information here. I'm more than happy to have further conversations offline from this meeting. I realize that, you never really can get everything in a format like this. If you have other comments that you want to make to me, if you'd like to have a follow-up conversation, I'm happy to make myself available. I'll also be sharing the presentation, and we'll be sharing the recording of the meeting for folks to view in case you weren't able to make it. So all those people who had other obligations will have a chance to see what was said. So thank you very much. If anybody has any closing comments, happy to hear those briefly now. But we do look forward to moving ahead with this process with the community.
Yeah, so Richard, I'm sure you were signing off here to comment, but just to say from Studio Gang, we're really happy to kind of be listening to you all. And I'd say feel free to reach out to us too at Studio Gang. We're happy to hear additional thoughts and comments you might all have. So thanks so much for your time today.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And yeah, we'll be following up and be talking more at our next roundtable meeting. And look for an email coming from me with the meeting materials. So we really appreciate everybody's time and your feedback, and look forward to continuing this process on as we get closer to reality of new development on the site. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, Brian.